Right guys, so this is Oscar's tail. Since I've started doing this, I've had quite a few people asking why he hasn't got a tail. I know some of you have been waiting about 6 months for this, so we're here at last, so we'll get on with the story. Right, so just a bit of a background information on what's going on here is throughout his life, I mean he's 10 now, we've been doing a lot of travelling and days out. We've been all over the country, visited all sorts of different places, and this one fateful day we were heading down to Kent, but what we had to do was drive to Skipton and catch the train from Skipton down towards London and into Canterbury. So anyway, we drove down there, had a little walk, went to the station, train pulls in, get on the train, everything's going as normal, heading off through Clitheroe down into Manchester. And what we do, it's usually like the older tour trains that we get, because they're a lot more inexpensive and direct as compared to the normal railways. So that means it's like the old style trains with the windows that you can pull down and look out of, which we often do if we're travelling slowly, going through the suburbs, or just leaving any stations in general. We'll have a look out the window where the doors are, pull the window down, have a look out. And he loves to stick his head out and have a watch, see what's happening, which I don't mind him doing. He loves doing it. His ears flapping in the wind as we're going along slowly, usually anything under 30 mile an hour, and he's fine. I'll have a look out with him. And so we were doing that, and I'll only let him do it for about maybe 3 or 4 minutes, because I don't want him getting sore eyes. His eyes are sticky out ones, and it's irritating for him if he looks out the window for too long. So he only has a couple of minutes here and there, but he loves it nonetheless. And so his time was up. He'd had a couple of minutes. We were just sort of on the approach to Manchester, and we'd slowed down, so he was having a look out, checking out Manchester, checking out all the houses and stuff as he does, people pointing at him and as we were going past. And so I took him back round the corner to where the seat was. Our table was just next to the door, and he sat down on his towel on the seat, and I went back to the window to have a look out as we were passing through Manchester. And one thing I noticed about that day, it was a very, very hot day, and the air conditioning on the train was broke. And that in itself is what led to what happened on that day. The fact that it was so hot and the air conditioning was broke. That's sort of why it happened. What happened was, I was looking out the window as I described, and after about 30 seconds, to my horror, Oscar came bailing out of the window next to me, flying out the train, and I just seen him go down, and he landed on the opposite track, and he bounced once, and then he bounced again, and when he landed for the second time, he actually disappeared underneath the train that we were on. It went over him, and I cannot describe what that felt like. It's like nothing I've ever felt before in my life. It's like one of them instances where people say, oh, you're just like instantly sick. I was fighting it back. I just couldn't believe what had happened, and I didn't know whether we were just going to go straight down to the guard and tell him what had happened and say stop the train, blah blah blah, or another instinct was to go into the carriage and find out who the hell had thrown him out the window, because that is exactly what it looked like. I thought someone had threw him out the window the way he came out. So anyway, I decided to run down to the guard. I could barely feel my legs underneath me. It was a horrendous feeling, experience. Everything changes, the way you think, even physically. It just absolutely ripped me apart seeing what I just saw. So anyway, I got to the guard and told him what had happened, and he said we can't stop the train at the minute, but it's going to be stopping in about 3-4 minutes anyway at Stockport station. So after 3 or 4 minutes, what seemed like 3 or 4 hours, we got into Stockport. I'd actually gone back to the carriage, and the passengers said what actually happened. What actually happened was a bit different to what I thought. Now we'll go back to the red hot day and the air conditioning not working. Also, a third factor was that one of the doors next to us was out of order. So what they'd done is they'd got like a polished piece of wood and they'd nailed it where the door was, sort of like so it was a shelf, if you would, not like against it, but making like a shelf, if you will, so you couldn't get to the door itself. Obviously red hot, air conditioning not working, that door itself, the window was down on that door to get a bit of cool air in, and so what had happened, Oscar decided that he wanted to look out the window some more. He wasn't happy with me sending him back to his seat. He wanted to look out the window, so we were going through Manchester, and he'd noticed this opportunity, this door that was out of order with a window down, and it handily had a ledge just at the right height for him what he could jump up onto so he could have a look out the window. So the passengers said that he was looking at it and he was sort of like wanting to be up there, they could tell, but he couldn't quite reach. So the next thing, he took a run and jump at it and he landed on it, but because it was like a polished wood, he actually slid across it and went tearing out the window. He couldn't stop himself and he just went straight through the window, and that's what I saw. So anyway, that's what he'd done. He hadn't been thrown out like I thought, but he'd jumped himself and not been able to stop himself. So it's a combination of the fact that it was a red hot day, air conditioning wasn't working, and that door was out of order, and as a result of all them three, that had happened. Anyway, so I got off at Stockport station, still not knowing what I was going to do. I had an idea of where it happened. It was just north of Denton station, because I remember after it happened we just sort of rolled through Denton station. So I got a taxi to Denton station. I was phoning the missus on the way, and I didn't say, oh, I think the dog's dead. I just phoned her and I said, oh, the dog's dead. Simple as that. Not think he's dead, the dog's dead. And she was in hysterics, I was in hysterics. Got to Denton station, so at this point I was going to walk down the tracks to try and find his body. As far as I was concerned, I was going to find at least 2 pieces of him. I thought he was going to be cut in half because of him going under the train going over him. So I started walking down the tracks to recover what was left of him, and yeah, I must have walked about half a mile down the tracks. I had to dodge 2 trains. They were like honking like hell. They must have wondered what the heck I was doing, but obviously I didn't care. I had no interest whatsoever in safety or what was going on. I just wanted to get to him, even though I knew he was dead. And I got to the point where it got to a signal box, and it was about, yeah, like I say, about half a mile. And I thought something was unusual, because I was 99% sure that it was somewhere between the station and the signal box, and I'd walked all the way up there and I couldn't find nothing whatsoever. And at that point the signal man came out and he said, look, you can't be walking down the tracks like this. We've heard what's happened, and the British Transport Police have been informed about it, and they're out looking for him as well. They're searching the area. So I said, right, fair enough. He said, come in the signal box and we'll see what we can come up with, see what ideas we've got. So I got in the signal box and he'd said, there is another footpath that runs along it for another quarter of a mile or so. You could always go and check that. So I went out and checked that. Absolutely nothing. I knew I'd gone too far down the line by this point, that I'd missed him or something. So I'd got back to the signal box, and within 5 minutes a fella came in with Oscar in his arms, and he said, is this what you're looking for? And I just burst out crying. Yeah, it was like, oh, I can't explain it, the relief and the emotions that were going through my head then, to the point where, to give you an idea of what it was like, I looked over at the signal man who I was talking with, and was, you know, giving us advice, and he was crying himself. The fella in the signal box was actually had tears rolling down his face. So I thought, now next thing is, God, what's wrong with him? What's, you know, his injuries, things like that. And I noticed there was blood around his back end, and I could tell it was his tail sort of thing. And when I picked him up, he didn't yelp or anything. He seemed to be okay-ish at first glance. So the fella from Network Rail, is it? I think he drove us to the vet. He was good enough to personally take us about 5 miles to the nearest vet in Ashton-under-Lyne. And when we got there, I phoned my mum and dad and said, oh, can you come and pick us up? I explained what had happened, so they set off to Manchester, which is about a 2-hour drive. And anyway, after he'd been in, the vet had a look at him. He said, oh, you're going to have to wait your turn. And I explained what had happened, and he sort of face dropped a bit, and he says, right, we'll take him in straight away. Anyway, about half an hour later, he'd come out. No, it was about an hour later, he'd come out, and his tail was missing. It was on when he went in, but when he came out, it was missing. And he said, right, we've had a good look over him. And he said, other than his tail, he's absolutely 100%. He's got no cuts, no bruises, no broken bones, nothing. He was, like I say, other than his tail, he was absolutely fine. But they said obviously they had to get rid of his tail, because what had happened by the look of things is when he went under the train did actually run him over, but it just caught his tail. And he said his tail was hanging on by a piece of skin, and all the bone inside it was just ground to dust. So basically, if he'd have been, say, 3 inches further over when he landed the last time, his back end would have been cut off, or another 6 inches over, he would have been cut in half. So over his tail it went, and that's the reason why he has got no tail. It was run over by a train and almost severed instantly. Right, so my mum and dad eventually turned up and collected us in the car, and obviously I drove to Skipton, so we had to drive to Skipton and pick up my car. So when we got to Skipton, I said, oh, just drop us off at the large open area, fields and that. I said, I'll walk 5 minutes, see if he needs to go to the toilet before I get to the car. So I put him down. I noticed there was about 3 or 4 rabbits in the distance, and as we walked over to him, lo and behold, he goes off like a rocket and starts chasing these rabbits. It's like, do you not understand what's just happened to you, and all you're bothered about is chasing rabbits? And he's going like hell for leather chasing these rabbits. And I was like, yep, he's absolutely fine, absolutely spot on. I couldn't believe it. Him chasing them rabbits was like, just confirmed that, you know, everything was all right with him, and you know, it didn't even traumatise him. I was the one that was traumatised through it all. So anyway, so I give it about a week later, and I wondered how he was again psychologically, if it had affected him like that. So what I did is I took him down to the local station just to see what he was like around a train, because we use trains a lot for travelling, so see if it had put him off. So we got to the station. I was really anxious, and I could see the train pulling in. It was coming in, and as it approached, he just sat there, and he actually got up and walked over to it as it came closer. And then when the doors opened, he just jumped on it. So I was like, right. So I followed him on it, on we got, and that turned out to be a nice rail day out in the Yorkshire Dales, and we had a cracking day out. Yeah, just jumped straight on it like nothing had happened. Talk about like getting back on the horse when you've fallen off. So yeah, within a week he was back on the rails and back doing his thing, and he's been absolutely fine ever since. So I've got loads of these videos as well, of these trips that I do that I've been talking about, and I'll get them uploaded so you can see him on his adventures. And I'll just get back home and I'll show you something else with regards to his story that's quite interesting. So I'll be right back in just a sec. Right, so anyway, after about a week or so after this happening, I decided to get in touch with a local paper and see if we could get a small bit, you know, put in the paper with regards to what happened in his story. When the paper eventually did come out, I was quite surprised to find that he was on the front page. the tale of Oscar's great train escape. Oscar with his owner and the Canterbury Tales Express tour. Yeah, funnily enough, that train tour that we were on and it happened was called the Canterbury Tales Express, which was kind of ironic, isn't it? Cheeky Cavalier Spaniel cheated death after tumbling out of a moving train. Full story, page 5. So yeah, that was a front page of the Evening Mail. And if you look into the inset, there we go. Oscar survived sleep from speeding train. It wasn't really speeding, it was only doing about 20-25 mile an hour. So it's papers at the best. You can pause that if you want to have a read of it. But the story I've just told you is a bit more accurate, as you can imagine. But yeah, there's us. And the offending train. The front page. And not only that, Chat magazine also got involved. I really thought my Oscar was doggone. What do you expect from Chat magazine? Houdini Hound. You can have a read through that if you pause it. Again, this is probably not quite as accurate as the story I told you, but this was their take on it. Yeah, so anyway, got it in the papers as well. And there you go, that's Oscar's tale, all there is to know about it. So, got lots of videos coming over the next 12 months or so. All them trips that I've been telling you about that we do, travelling all over the country. I did from the very start video them and do some recording and covering where we went and stuff like that. So I will start posting them. They won't be audits obviously, but I think there's enough of you out there now that just enjoy watching Oscar, so I'll post them videos. And there's also going to be some juicy holiday videos where I've took him abroad as well. So he's one spoilt rotten pooch. So keep an eye out for those. I'm sure you'll enjoy them. And thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story. I hope it was worth the wait. He's going to have a chew of his foot now. No, he's given up on it. And here's a small clip from one of our trips when we were on the way back from Cambridge at Nuneaton, just to give you an idea of how he is round trains nowadays. I think you'll agree it's quite amazing. Alright, I'll catch you in a bit, guys.